Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're exploring a critical, often invisible part of our healthcare landscape,
Mhm.
the really demanding role family caregivers play, especially when they're managing something as complex and, well, emotionally charged as pain for a loved one.
It's a monumental task, yeah, and often a very silent responsibility. So, in this deep dive, our mission is really to illuminate the specific, sometimes overwhelming challenges these family caregivers face,
Hmm.
specifically with pain management for folks with advanced illnesses.
Right.
We've pulled together insights from a really comprehensive, systematic review of 55 studies on this exact subject. And we also want to share some practical, actionable tips for assessing pain. The idea is to give you a clearer, maybe more empathetic understanding of this vital caregiving role.
Okay, so let's start by defining who we're actually talking about here. A family caregiver, or FC,
Yeah.
the definition is basically someone who has a significant personal relationship with and provides a broad range of assistance for an older person or an adult with a chronic or disabling condition.
Mhm.
And the sheer scale of this is,
Mhm.
well, it's staggering.
It truly is. We're talking about an estimated 53 million Americans currently in this role. It's just a massive, often unacknowledged workforce. They're performing duties absolutely critical for patient well-being, but they often get little to no formal training.
And when you add pain into that mix, the complexity just skyrockets, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Pain is incredibly common for individuals with advanced illnesses, things like cancer, dementia, cardiovascular disease, pulmonary diseases.
Yeah, you've hit on a really crucial point there. Pain management is so much more intricate than just like handing out medication. It's this ongoing task that demands constant assessment, careful treatment delivery, monitoring responses, watching for side effects, and
Yeah.
then clear communication with the whole care team.
Right.
And the difficult truth is, these dedicated family caregivers frequently step into this huge role without any structured preparation, no formal training.
And when pain isn't managed effectively, the consequences are really severe and they ripple outwards. You see patients struggling to stick to their pain plans, maybe relying more on emergency department visits, and heartbreakingly, it leads to significant stress and burden for the caregivers themselves. So to really get our heads around the scope of this challenge, the systematic review we mentioned, it categorized these caregiver hurdles into four main areas. Let's dive into the first one. Issues directly related to the caregiver themselves, often internal struggles, right, or personal circumstances,
Mm.
and fears. Fears really jump out.
Yes, absolutely. A large number of the studies, I think around 40%, highlighted common fears caregivers have about pain medication. And these aren't just minor worries, they're profound concerns about causing addiction or tolerance or medication-induced side
Oh,
effects.
wow.
There's even this deeply disturbing fear of causing respiratory depression or even worse, hastening their loved one's death.
Mhm.
The research found that about 30% of caregivers were actually hesitant to even give pain medication because of these
And
fears.
that's
Yeah, so it's not just about misinformation. It really reveals this profound moral tightrope caregivers are walking, where the act of helping can feel like it might be harming. That's a burden few people really understand.
that is an incredibly heavy weight to carry. And compounding that, the research also showed that culture, personal beliefs, religious convictions, they play a significant role too.
Definitely. About a quarter of the studies touched on this.
Imagine believing pain is just inevitable, or maybe a natural part of dying, or even a sign the disease is progressing. Those beliefs can make a caregiver reluctant to provide pain treatments or even just report the pain. It creates this hidden layer of suffering.
It's a powerful personal story about pain that directly impacts the care being given. And related to that, another critical factor found in about 18% of the studies was the caregiver's own health and cognitive function.
That makes sense.
It does, right. If a caregiver is battling their own declining health or maybe experiencing high levels of stress and anxiety, it directly impacts their ability to manage such a complex responsibility. For instance, higher anxiety levels in caregivers were linked to greater difficulty understanding medication instructions. We also saw the impact of a caregiver's own literacy limitations or cognitive issues.
Yeah, all of that seems to tie into this idea of self-efficacy, which came up in a smaller number of studies, maybe 5%. This is about a caregiver's belief in their own ability, their confidence, to effectively manage pain.
Exactly. And when that belief, that self-efficacy is low, it becomes a significant barrier. It fundamentally undermines their confidence and effectiveness in a role that demands constant, often difficult decision-making.
Okay, so if personal fears and beliefs are one critical layer, then the research reveals another really staggering hurdle. Caregivers often just aren't given the basic tools they need. Which brings us neatly to the second major category of challenges identified in the review: limited knowledge and skills in pain management. This feels pretty foundational.
It really is. A substantial number of studies, maybe 20%, pointed specifically to concerns with pain assessment. Caregivers frequently struggle to accurately recognize and evaluate pain, mostly because they just lack specific training on how to do it.
And what's particularly interesting here is this concept of pain assessment congruency.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically whether the caregiver's understanding of the patient's pain matches or doesn't match what the patient themselves or healthcare providers report.
Right, and that disconnect often gets much worse when the patient has cognitive impairment. It's quite striking that in one study, 37% of caregivers reported not feeling confident in their ability to assess pain.
So they feel insecure about it.
Yeah, very much so. And this is really a pivotal moment in understanding the challenge, especially for those care partners who do have impaired cognitive function or simply can't verbalize their pain. Family caregivers face unique and incredibly difficult challenges in these situations. This is precisely where observing nonverbal cues becomes absolutely critical.
Okay, so when caregivers are struggling to recognize pain, especially when their loved one can't speak, what should they be looking for? This review points to some incredibly practical tools, things that, if taught, could bridge this massive knowledge gap. So, drawing from a helpful resource mentioned, here are some actionable things to look for when someone can't tell you they hurt. First, look at their face. Are you seeing like a wrinkled brow, a clenched jaw, maybe a blank expression? Are the corners of their mouth turned down?
Mm-hmm. Or even a fearful or alarmed look, a scowl, a stern expression. Those are all potential signals.
Right. Then observe their breathing.
Yeah, this is key. When someone's in pain, their body uses a lot of energy, which can lead to more labored breathing. So is it noisy, strained? Is their breathing rate faster than usual? Are they maybe gasping for air? These are vital clues.
Okay. Next up is movement.
Right. Watch for things like squirming, general uneasiness, or fidgeting. Are their fists clenched? Or is their body rigid? Are they rubbing or tugging at certain body parts, maybe drawing their legs up or flailing their arms? Or do they pull away when you touch them? All signs.
Got it. And
Yeah.
then, of course, sounds.
Absolutely. Listen closely. Are they moaning, whimpering, crying? Are there other unpleasant noises? Screaming, yelling? Any of these vocalizations can indicate pain.
And finally, there's this really helpful tip, especially when you combine it with these other observations. Can they be comforted?
Yeah, this is a great one. Can simple reassurance or maybe a gentle touch calm them down without needing medication? If not, it strongly suggests that pain is probably the underlying issue.
These are really concrete things caregivers could be taught.
Exactly. But beyond just assessment, a staggering number of studies, over half actually, 53%, highlighted what they called inadequate information in pain management. Caregivers consistently report this profound lack of adequate information about the disease process itself, the prognosis, different types of pain, treatment options, both meds and non-meds, and even just the basic essential steps of managing pain day to day.
Wow, over half the studies. That knowledge gap means caregivers often genuinely struggle to know when to use specific pain medications, right?
Right.
Or how to properly evaluate if they're working, or spot potential side effects.
Precisely. And alarmingly, this lack of clarity leads to real, sometimes dangerous medication errors. For example, confusion over generic versus brand names came up, or misunderstanding the difference between long-acting and short-acting medication.
Oh, that's critical.
It really is. And a particularly dangerous mistake that surfaced was caregivers crushing long-acting medication. That dramatically increases the risk of accidental overdose, or it might make the medication less effective.
That's terrifying.
It is. One study reported that nearly half, 47% of family caregivers struggled with medication administration, specifically with dosage, scheduling, how to give it. Another found that caregivers made errors with, as needed, the PRN doses almost half the time, often giving no dose or a lower dose than prescribed.
Ah.
And get this, in 12% of cases, a sedative was given instead of a pain reliever because caregivers mistakenly believed that sedation meant the pain was relieved.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and the adherence to pain medication regimens. Only 37% of caregivers were found to be adherent in one study, and critically, this low adherence was directly linked to significantly higher pain severity for the patient.
It's not just about giving the medication either, is it? It's managing the whole system. Several studies, maybe 13%, revealed challenges with correct documentation, getting the meds, storing them, tracking them, and even safely disposing of them.
That's right. Most caregivers just lacked a proper system to track treatments. That makes checking for errors or managing refills incredibly difficult. Plus, safe storage and disposal, especially for opioids, often just wasn't happening. Caregivers express real frustration about not knowing how to properly dispose of things like transdermal patches or unused morphine at home.
That really highlights how these practical issues intersect with, say, safety concerns and lack of information.
Absolutely.
Okay, this leads us pretty naturally into our third major category of challenges, communication breakdowns with healthcare providers. This sounds like it was a widespread issue too, highlighted in about 36% of the studies. The core problem seems to be inadequate information sharing by the healthcare providers about pain management, disease status, treatment options.
That's right. And a lack of guidance, support, and timely responses from healthcare professionals directly contributes to ineffective pain management. Caregivers sometimes even feel, embarrassed or reluctant to approach providers for help, especially after hours. And unfortunately, issues like paternalistic communication styles from some providers or just a general lack of trust from the caregiver in the care team also act as significant barriers. Around 29% of caregivers in one review reported poor communication, including conflicts and lapses.
So it's a two-way street issue there.
Often,
All
yes.
right, our fourth and final category delves into patient-related issues, and this is quite profound. Many studies, about 24%, pointed to a reluctance on the patient's part to even report their pain.
Yes, often care partners simply don't tell their family caregivers about their pain. Why? Usually because they want to avoid increasing the burden on their caregivers or maybe on the healthcare providers.
It's like they're trying to protect their caregivers.
Exactly. It's a kind of silent suffering to protect those they love. And in a number of studies, maybe 14%, patients themselves expressed a fear of using pain medication.
So similar fears to the caregivers.
Somewhat, yeah. Some were afraid of side effects, and actually, one study found 45% of patients experienced adverse effects, so it's not an unfounded fear. Others feared addiction, tolerance, or maybe the stigma sometimes associated with using pain medication. This can lead to patients just tolerating pain to avoid those perceived side effects rather than seeking relief.
That brings up a really critical and often heartbreaking dilemma, which also came up in about 14% of studies. Balancing quality of life with pain management. This is such a crucial concern for both patients and family caregivers, finding that sweet spot, that balance between getting enough pain relief and managing the physical and emotional burden that comes with daily pain management.
It's a constant negotiation. And then in some cases, about 8% of studies mentioned this, patients had an outright inability to report pain effectively. For those patients, difficulty expressing pain verbally leads directly back to that assessment incongruency we discussed earlier, where the caregiver really struggles to accurately gauge their pain levels.
This whole landscape of challenges, it inevitably leads to a profound and often devastating impact on the family caregiver's own well-being, right? It extends far beyond just the patient. These pain management duties have significant negative consequences on the caregiver's own physical and psychological health.
Absolutely. Physically, family caregivers often report feeling utterly exhausted, just constantly busy, especially those administering medication around the clock. This relentless schedule means they simply don't have enough time for their own daily activities, crucial self-care, or their other responsibilities.
And the psychological toll sounds immense. Pain management is frequently identified as one of the most distressing caregiving responsibilities.
It really is. Caregivers often feel unprepared, helpless, deeply frustrated. Just witnessing their care partner's pain and suffering day in, day out is incredibly stressful and overwhelming. The constant pressure to just be there, be available for breakthrough pain, is a significant burden.
Yeah.
And here's a truly heartbreaking detail that connects back. Higher anxiety in caregivers was directly linked to greater difficulty understanding medication use. And in one study, 11% of family caregivers reported having bad memories of care partners' unrelieved pain. That kind of trauma sticks with you.
Oh, absolutely. That's just deeply saddening to even think about.
So what does this all mean for us? What are the big takeaways? This systematic review didn't just reconfirm what we already suspected. It really sharpened our understanding. It clarified specific unmet knowledge needs for family caregivers, vital areas like verbal and nonverbal pain assessment, making those tough treatment decisions, safe medication management. These are specific practical skills that haven't been fully addressed in prior research.
It points to a systemic failure, really, to equip caregivers with the fundamental how-tos, and that puts patient safety directly at risk.
Exactly.
And looking ahead, you mentioned technology. There's potential there.
Huge potential. Future studies really need to explore how digital health tools and telehealth could provide crucial support for both family caregivers and healthcare providers. especially given how much more we rely on these tools since the COVID pandemic. They could be transformative in improving pain outcomes, providing information, maybe facilitating communication.
Right. Makes sense.
This review also highlighted a critical call to action regarding under-researched populations. This is vital for you, our informed listener, to be aware of. For example, there's a significant, almost astonishing gap in research when it comes to dementia.
Really? How so?
Well, 84% of the studies in this review focused on cancer. Only 16% looked at non-cancer diagnoses, and just 5% specifically focused on dementia or Alzheimer's disease.
Wow, only 5%?
Yeah. Yet we know over half of individuals with the dementia experience regular pain, and caregivers for these individuals face even greater challenges. Think about it. Uncertain pain causes, the cognitive decline itself, the difficulty recognizing nonverbal pain cues, trouble evaluating if treatments are working.
It multiplies the difficulties we've already discussed.
Immensely.
Yeah.
And inadequate pain control in dementia can trigger neuropsychiatric symptoms like agitation or aggression, increase healthcare use, and lead to poor outcomes for both the patient and the caregiver. Research is just urgently needed here.
It's incredible how such a prevalent condition can be so under-researched in this context. And you mentioned another gap, multimorbidity.
Yes. Multimorbidity, that's when someone has multiple chronic health conditions at the same time. Now, while a huge percentage of adults, like 40%, and almost all older adults, maybe 90% in the US, have multimorbidity, not a single one of the 55 studies in this review focused specifically on family caregivers for these care partners.
Why?
One focusing on that specific group. We desperately need strategies to help family caregivers acquire the skills to assess different types of pain from different conditions and interpret those verbal and nonverbal cues when multiple illnesses are interacting.
It adds another layer of complexity to assessment.
Exactly. And looking even further ahead, there's a need for studies developing things like automatic pain recognition tools, using AI or sensors perhaps, to assist caregivers with this incredibly complex task, potentially reducing some of that burden.
Okay, so to quickly recap what we've covered today, family caregivers face this really complex, multifaceted array of challenges when managing pain for their loved ones. It ranges from deeply personal fears and significant knowledge gaps to communication breakdowns with healthcare providers and tricky patient-specific issues like reluctance to report pain.
And all of this takes an immense emotional and physical toll on the caregivers themselves, impacting their own health and well-being profoundly.
Which really leads us to a final thought, a provocative question for you to consider.
Given this critical, often unseen role that family caregivers play, how might we as a society, as a healthcare system, revolutionize support systems? How can we proactively equip them with the precise knowledge, the practical skills, and the emotional resilience they so desperately need? How do we transform this immense burden into a truly powerful, informed partnership in care?